Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller. This is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, preparing yourself to survive the inevitable huge losses of life. In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes, said Benjamin Franklin. Well, what are death and taxes? Well, arguably, they're losses. What is trauma and tragedy? And I'd submit that they're primarily losses. And I feel we generally go about our lives, I have too, day in and day out, trying to avoid losses, expecting that, hoping that that won't happen to me, right? And yet it is going to happen. We will have a financial fall, or we'll have a once beloved relationship end. We'll have a car wreck or a house fire or a disease or disability or just getting old and dying. Almost 100% of people are going to agree, I think, that it's wise to have money in the savings, right? Just in case. Why don't we have emotional understanding and strength in savings per se for the loss that will come? So my guest is Colin Campbell. Here's a story. On March 14th, 2023, Colin and his wife were driving their car. They're both sitting in the front seats. In the back were their two teenagers, Ruby and Hart. A woman who was driving completely drunk went through an intersection doing 90 miles an hour, never saw them, never braked, and hit the car right at the passenger doors. And Ruby and Hart died that day, while Colin and his wife were able to walk away from the crash. What followed is a dramatic amount of grief that you'd likely expect. But, Colin says, I always believed deep in my heart that my life would just keep getting better and better. And isn't that all of us? Waking each day, hoping and really expecting that things are going to be okay. And we don't get that dreaded call or have that accident ourselves. Now, I sure don't want to go about expecting tragedy to be coming in my life. That's not a good way to go about. But I've recently gone through the loss of my marriage of almost 32 years and losing our family home that we built. Two things I literally thought were impossible. I thought I would die with my wife and I would die in that home. Well, I also have 9 kids and multiple grandkids. I've lost the arrogance to think that that won't happen to me. And my odds are plenty high that I'll experience more significant loss in my life. And again, I'm not going around negatively or pessimistically at all, but I just want to be sober-minded and think, how can I deal with it well? What if I have a kid die? Well, I've got a lot of other kids too. I'm not going to minimize it, but how do I prepare me? That's what we're talking about. Colin, just for context, Colin Campbell, he's a writer, a director for theater and film. He teaches screenwriting at Chapman University and theater at California State Polytechnic University. Campbell's highly anticipated solo performance, it's a piece titled Grief. It's going to be performed this coming year in Los Angeles and New York. And his book, that's what I got a hold of and why I contacted him to be on the show, is called Finding the Words, Working Through Profound Loss with Hope and Purpose. The book had actually come to me a couple years ago, and I didn't feel a big need for it at the time. Well, now I do. So before we get started, let me give you this quote from Colin. He said, "A profound loss is when you lose someone," and I'd add, or something, "that you feel is entwined intrinsically with your identity." In other words, you define yourself partly in terms of this other person or this thing. That's really where I dive in with the conversation. All right, coming up next, Colin Campbell and this deep dive into preparing and dealing with loss. Let's evolve ourselves today. Colin, the title of the book, Finding the Words, and the focus even on that, I continue to feel more gravity around words, around terms, and all the beliefs and baggage and context that we have around words and how much they mean to us and how much we lose through not understanding the meaning, and we don't communicate and we don't connect. So I think that's what drew me in. Was honestly, it was a connection I felt with your perspectives in reading the book. So thank you, and thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
The book hooked me. The message hooked me. I think right at the beginning, I think it was in your intro, first chapter. I don't know. And you just really led off with kind of the concept of tragedy. And you said you did not ever really expect tragedy necessarily to find you. You figured, here's life. It's good. It's going to get better. And I resonated with that, thinking that I'm doing the right things. I have good intent. And sure, things happen, but I just kind of expect things to go along well, like you intend. Expectations, I'll just focus on that. And then when they don't, as you know, it can often be catastrophic. And I've known, as you probably have, I've known people who have had children die, who have had a spouse die, who have had a sibling or a parent. And it's almost wrecked them. Obviously, we know stories of people who've committed suicide. We know high rates of divorce. And so looking at tragedy, it's been something kind of on the fringes of my mind with the size of family that I've had going. I have, not to be pessimistic or negative, but I have a higher likelihood. I mean, the odds are not in my favor as far as that goes. What am I doing now to prepare myself? Which I would say you also can't do it until it happens. So how do you reconcile that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, your comment about your size of your family, I think it's so true. It's like the more people you open your heart to, the more vulnerable you are to loss.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's beautiful, right? Like we want to love more people, not less. And yet, as you said, it's so true. It makes you vulnerable. So it's part of life, I think, right? Yeah. The more we love, the more vulnerable we are. And yet we choose to love anyway. Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to have to scroll down here to the bottom of my notes. You pulled something out that I thought, holy smokes, that's worth the price of admission. Just this quote you gave. It was from C.S. Lewis. It was somewhere in the middle of the book. And you quoted C.S. Lewis saying, the pain I feel now is the happiness I had before. That's the deal.
Yeah.
It kind of gave me the chills.
Yeah, he's great.
Well, what a great, I'm a fan, but just that's the deal. And if you don't want the pain, then don't get married. Don't have kids. Don't have the high hopes. Don't have the expectation, because you're, like you just said, you're opening yourself up for that vulnerability. I don't know. For some reason, it feels massive. Like everybody, they should have that at every marriage ceremony. Hey, if you want this happiness, you could be setting yourself up from some pain. Are you game?
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope the answer is always yes, right? I hope everybody's like, right, that's the deal. That's how it works. Everybody dies, and we all are going to suffer loss. But we're here on earth for a short amount of time, and why not choose love? Yeah.
In the chapter you have on pain, you talk about something that I resonate with, and it was the aspect of, if we don't experience the pain, if we numb it, if we avoid it, if we deny it, reject it, whatever, then as we numb it, we're numbing everything else.
Yeah.
I don't like that, but I have to admit it makes sense. Yeah. So if we're numbing the pain, we're numbing everything else. But even that is hard to go, okay, yeah, bring the pain on.
Right. We're instinctually, you want to avoid pain, right? We're taught, everything about us growing up in experiencing pain, you avoid it. Something is sharp, you learn. Don't touch the sharp thing. The stove is hot. Don't touch that. Like, avoid that pain. But emotional pain, I think, is very different. Emotional pain is something that, if you're avoiding it, it doesn't go away. Like the hot stove goes away, but emotional pain doesn't. You suffer something, a loss, grief. You've got to process it. You've got to deal with it on some level at some point, or it's going to always hang around and come out in very unwanted ways.
How would you describe? Well, I got two questions. Let me start here. So the pain with losing your children, which if my math is right, it's about 6 years ago now. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Is it something I think in my past, and I'm going to say well-meaning, but ignorance, it would be the thought of, well, you get over the pain. Having endured some myself now, I'm feeling is, no, don't get over it. But I don't know. You tell me. I don't know what the pithy quote is. Do you make friends with it? Do you get stronger to carry it? You know all the pithy quotes.
Yeah, I think I have a different relationship to the pain now.
Okay.
I think I'm not scared of it the way I was. I was very scared of the pain. I thought that it hurt so bad that I would lose my mind, literally, and I'd never come back. I had that very real fear. My wife did too. And in fact, even when we were, several months in, and thinking, oh, we're doing okay. Like, we're doing okay. That must mean the other shoe's going to drop, and then we're going to lose our minds. It didn't feel safe. It felt like, okay, I haven't lost my mind yet, but it's going to come. It's going to happen. And now I'm at the point where, no, I don't believe that's going to happen. And the pain, when it comes, and it comes in unexpected moments, but in a way, I don't even mind it. I don't think it's like, oh, that's my connection to Ruby and Hart. That's just my heart feeling, missing them. And it aches and it hurts, but that's okay. Because in a way that just means that my heart's still open. I haven't shut it off. I'm not avoiding that. So I think that's and also the spikes of pain, it changes for sure. Before it was a debilitating pain. And now it's something that hits me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I wouldn't call it my friend, but maybe you make friends with it. You accommodate it, I think. I understand it's part of life.
Okay, 6 years in, so I'm thinking about like AA, so you're alcoholic, and you're 3 years past, you're 6 months past, you're 6 years past, you're 16, whatever it is. And then you have that time of feeling tempted, feeling down, something happened, and you call your sponsor. Is that what you're relating to? Like, you still have those times you think, I think I need to check in with somebody.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because for me, checking in with somebody is definitely like, I need to talk about Ruby and Hart. I need to talk about my grief to somebody. I need to go to their graves. I need to talk to them. I think for sure. I need to, in a way, I feel like if time goes by and I feel like a sense of like I'm neglecting my grief. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I need to take a moment here and maybe weep, maybe talk to somebody, maybe have a gathering of people to help me get through it. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of similar in the sense what you're saying with AA.
You have, if I look at the chapters of the book, pain, denial, guilt, rage, things of that nature. Do you still have those that surface, a moment of thinking back to that, something, a trigger, if you want to call it, and it's that flood of anger, rage? Does that still happen?
Yeah, I think I'm very uncomfortable with rage. Like just my own growing up, it always seemed like a scary thing. And so I think when I was younger, I would use comedy to I'd say something funny to avoid feeling the anger, and it still scares me, I guess. So it's a work in progress handling the rage. It used to be that I would literally walking down the street and I'd be talking to myself and I'd be enraged at somebody, not the woman who killed my kids, but some other person that I ran into. Someone was obnoxious to me. Someone cut me off. And I'd just start imagining like hurting them. And I'd be talking to myself out loud and I'd catch myself. I'm like, whoa, I must appear like a crazy person. Like literally, if you were across the street, look at me, you'd think that guy's lost his mind. And I'm like, I need to grieve. That's what I need to do, because I've been neglecting my grief and it's bottled me up, and I'm tight and angry, So I don't feel like at this point, I don't feel that happening too often. Not that I think I'm better with that. But the guilt is still there. The guilt is still hard for me. Yeah. I think about the night of the crash and what I could have done differently. it was a drunken high driver, and she never slowed down. She hit me at 90 miles an hour. But if I was extra cautious, maybe I wouldn't have made that turn. I would have thought, she's so far away, of course she's going to slow down. What if she doesn't? I shouldn't turn, But so I have to still deal with those feelings of guilt, and it's hard. But I think I've learned that that's okay too. Just like the pain is okay. It's okay that I feel guilty. It's something that I'm working with, but I don't need to dwell in it. Hopefully I don't get sucked into like a pit, right? Where I'm just dwelling and punishing myself with feelings of guilt. I try to avoid that. Yeah.
I'm curious about that, Colin, because what if you could look back and this is terrible, but what if you could look back, somebody could do a video and say, yeah, you missed it, dude. You kind of were negligent, actually. Mm-hmm. It still doesn't change anything. I'm kind of looking at that, not to minimize or justify, but with tragedies, with the tragedy in my life and the fracture of marriage and family, I look at that and go, gosh, was any of it my fault? Holy hell, yes, absolutely. Was I culpable? Hugely. And, my kids suffered for it and whatever. And yet, if I get lost in guilt, it doesn't really help anyone. It may be to admit my culpability, but to stick in guilt and to be suffering there. If I'm suffering, I'm just making everybody else. So I feel like it's my responsibility to recover. So saying that, but it still doesn't relate to what happened with you.
Well, no, I think it does. I think you're absolutely right. It's like intellectually, I know, it doesn't help them. It happened. It already happened, right? So me feeling bad doesn't bring back Ruby and Hart. It doesn't change anything. So why can't I just let it go? And yet it's easier said than done, right? So I think that's part of what I'm trying to work through. I have lots of, intellectual, not justifications, but ways of comforting myself, I guess, or reassuring myself, but I still feel it. I still think about it. I still feel it. I still feel bad. And so, like I said, I try not to. I don't want to. It doesn't help them.
Okay. The word that came to mind then was reconcile, trying to reconcile it. Tell me about that. I feel that, I don't know, we as a culture, we as humanity, we want to reconcile things. We want to figure out the reason why and find some, solid ground on that. And yet, again, looking at what happened, I found myself asking, can I be okay if I just can never reconcile it? I can't justify it. I can't reconcile it. Looking again at what happened in my marriage, it's a plane crash. It's wrecked. There's carnage. We can do damage control, but I can't reconcile that. I don't think anything's ever going to redeem it. And so to try to reconcile it, I don't think it's possible. So can I be okay without the reconciliation? How's that ring for you?
Yeah. Can you just live with it as it is? It's a problem. You don't feel great about it, but that's what it is. That makes sense to me. It's interesting. I'm on a journey right now. It's a very complicated one. And I don't know how I feel about it all, but it occurred to me. I read a book called The Book of Forgiving by Bishop Desmond Tutu. And that comes out of the Truth and Reconciliation in South Africa, right? So he's trying to figure out how do people forgive each other for terrible things that have happened to each other in this whole country of his, South Africa. And they said something in the book which really resonated, which was, they said, you can erase the person that hurts you. You can try and erase their humanity, deny their reality, their existence. You can sort of block them out and just proceed on your life along with your life. But there's this, I think they could, pile of pain that's waiting for you. And it occurred to me in that moment that I was trying to erase the woman who killed my children. So I would never say her name out loud. In my book, I never say her name. And it suddenly occurred to me that I was doing that I felt in the moment, I was like, she doesn't deserve a place in my children's story. Like, she ended their lives, but she doesn't earn a mention in their life to me, right? Ruby and Hart had their own lives, and then they were ended. I don't need to bring her into it. But then in a way, I think by denying her humanity, I was in a way not dealing with it.
Okay.
Not reconciling it. Right. I was trying to compartmentalize it, deny it maybe. And so I'm doing this thing called a victim offender dialogue, where it's very structured and supported by people who know what they're doing, who do this process a lot, but it brings victims and offenders together in prison to talk to each other. And so I'm just started that process. She's just agreed to it officially. And I have a meeting later on today, in fact, with the people who are going to help facilitate it. It's like a long process. So these two facilitators meet with me and with her separately for a couple of times over, I think, the course of several months, and then we meet together for one day. And I don't know. I'm scared right now to be in a room with her. It's very intimidating, and in terms of just like my emotions, right? I'm scared to what's that going to be like for me, and how will I? It's almost unfathomable. But I do feel like I need to do this in order to reconcile it, like you're saying. It's part of my process, I think.
So again, we're over 6 years after it, and you're doing that now. I had that down to ask you. Where are you with forgiveness? I mean, I don't know all the other cultures, but I know here in America, and especially from the religious context, which is where I come from, I mean, forgiveness is, touted as the Holy Grail. You forgive. Right. If you don't, it's eating away at you, and yada, yada, you've got to forgive. And I have a friend who was sexually abused by her father as a child. And it was later in life that she kind of forgave him and got past it. And then at the same age he sexually abused her daughter, his granddaughter.
Oh my God.
So it happened again.
Oh my God.
Kind of re-broke her even more so. And she finally came to a point. She's going to write on this. I've asked her to. She's going to write more because I'm so curious. But she said she was greatly helped by coming to the point of going, I'm not forgiving him. I'm never forgiving this guy. And for her, it was a great relief. Now, it brings into context what is our context with forgiveness? How do we define it? And we could get into semantics that may make it a different thing for one person to say it and then the other. But I've looked at that with no aha moment, but just it seems to have, I cite her as one of the most peaceful people I know. So on that, do you say that you've been in a place of unforgiveness, or you're just kind of muddling through it still?
Yeah, I think I was in a place of unforgiveness, but now I'm interested in the question of it. But in a broader sense, I think that it's everybody's journey, to support your friend. The notion, I think there is like a cultural pressure of like, you should forgive, you should do this. It's going to help you. Yeah. And in the Bishop Desmond Tutu's book, he does talk a lot about how, people who have had things done to them, whatever they are, they can be shackled by their rage, or they're shackled by their, desire for punishment. And in a way, you can set yourself free, and you don't even need the person you're forgiving to be contrite, because in a way that means that they've still got you. If you're dependent on what they're doing, you're still trapped. Yeah. But how do you set yourself free? By just stepping away from it. But I think it's up to everybody. I don't think there's any should. I don't think there's any need or should. Is it going to help you on your journey? And like you said, it set her free to not forgive him, to not feel that pressure, right? To be like, you know what, I don't have to do that. And I think that's very true on an individual level. And for me personally, I don't know. I'm in a question a place of questioning. So I'm doing this process. It's just interesting that the book, one of the other things that resonated in this book, the Book of Forgiving, is that they say in the very beginning, there's sort of it's almost like a prayer, sort of like an incantation almost, a poem, where the speaker, and I listened to it on the audiobook, and it was actually his daughter who was the speaker, who read this poem, but it was something along the lines of like, you're not ready to forgive. You can't even imagine forgiving, but you can imagine the possibility of maybe being in a place where you might forgive. You know what I mean? And I was like, that's exactly where I am. That's exactly where I am. I was like, wow. That was sort of beautifully put. And that's okay to be in that place. So that's where I am. And I'm interested in exploring her humanity in a way to help me with my own forgiveness, self-forgiveness.
Man, I have so many different paths I want to go down here. I'm going to come back for a minute to where we started with tragedy. And, again, I don't want to call it what a morbid, negative, pessimistic, whatever. I'm not going around expecting to get a call that one of my kids has died or whatever. But in looking at it and going, oh, in my case, would it wreck me? Well, I've got other kids that are still dependents, here. And I want to be, call it resilient, strong, peaceful. I want to be building that now. What can I be doing? So I'm literally, in doing that and looking at that, if you could go, I found myself curious thinking, if you could go back to Colin 7-8 years ago, not that you would have known you were going to lose your children, but if you could go back to that guy and help him deal with it better, it feels like a huge question. I don't know if it's even fair, but as you look at because I want to dig into attachments and identity, how would you have possibly altered where you were to better deal with the loss?
Yeah. Well, I think, the short answer is that it would wreck you. Even though you have other children, it doesn't matter. So I've spoken to a lot of parents who have multiple children, but only lost one, and they're wrecked. They're wrecked. So we lost all of our children.
Yeah. And
sometimes it was, in the early days, it was confusing to me when someone lost just one child and had other living children. I was a little confused. I was like, I don't get it. All I want is one of my kids back, and you have a living kid. What's your problem? Like, literally, that's what I thought, And I've since come to understand that's not how it works. You could have as many kids as you could imagine, and the one you lost that's the one that that loss is everything. And so I guess, but then you process it, and you find a way forward. But it doesn't diminish it just because you have more children. It doesn't make it easier. And I think before I lost Ruby and Hart, I was really extra unprepared for grieving. I had no cultural tools at my disposal. So I was my parents were both raised by Protestants, and they rebelled in their 20s against their parents, who kind of pretty strict, religious background that my parents both rebelled against. And became atheists and raised all three of their kids as atheists. So I was raised as an atheist, and I love being an atheist, but not when it came to grief, because suddenly I had nothing. No cultural practice, no experience with grief, and so I have since delved into the Jewish rituals of grieving.
Yeah,
and so I don't believe in God, but I believe these rituals are very wise, basically, and practical. And they literally taught me how to grieve. I think that's probably true for many religions, because they've been around for so long. These rituals, they're all about, the particular faith, but they're also based in, millennia of experience. What's going to help these people, I think. And so for me, my wife's Jewish, and we raised our kids as Jews, and an active member of our temple. And so it made sense for me to lean into the Jewish practices. And I think they're so wise, and so much of them involve community, which is counterintuitive to me, at least. I thought, like, something terrible happens to you, you go away, right? You don't want to be around people. You're so upset. You're like, I can't be social right now. I want to retreat. The Jews have this thing called Shiva, where for the first 7 nights after the funeral, people come to your house and sit with you every night. And in a way, it's the last thing I wanted. But yet, at Shiva, once it was happening, there's all these people who love me and who love Ruby and Hart in my house. And we're all talking about Ruby and Hart, and we're talking about my grief and grieving. And it was so helpful. And it was kind of like, oh, this is what grieving is. This is how we grieve. We talk about our loss. That's like literally how we process it. And it made so much sense to me suddenly, because it's how we process everything, right? If you see a funny movie, you got to tell your friends about it to really understand what was so funny about that movie. And then you tell your friends and you're like, oh yeah. And then you couldn't understand the movie in a different context, a deeper context. And people were social creatures, humans. So if I could have gone back in time, I would have told Colin, like, look into these rituals of grieving, and understand how important it is to grieve in community, and to talk about our loss. I figured it out pretty quickly because I was doing these rituals, but it would have helped me. I was so lost in the beginning. I was so lost and scared.
I'm thinking about, we talk about death some. We have that a lot. There's not so much in the American culture that I'm aware of, but in other cultures where they make death familiar. They celebrate it, or they commemorate it. They make it part of more of the daily context, and it's much more palatable for people, it seems like, than what I experience here, where we want to kind of avoid it and run from it and not look old and, whatever. We're pushing death off like mad. And so the concept, I don't think, is very unfamiliar of, becoming comfortable with death.
Yeah.
In reading your story, I, again, found myself thinking about wouldn't we be well to do that with tragedy to some degree? To the point that you can. I mean, again, we can try to get as comfortable with death as we want to. But my father died not long ago, real sudden, cancer diagnosis, and then boom, he died. And it was my first encounter with it. And it's really altered some of my perspectives and feelings around death. And I can come up with my hypothesis of how I think I would deal with it if I was in his place. And yet I also know there's no way on earth I can adequately conceive of what it's going to be like, what it would be like to get that diagnosis. So same thing. Yeah. Can I prepare myself to have a child die? Not completely. No. But why don't we? Well, and again, that's what I feel like in your book. This is something to read. I find myself thinking, I don't want to recommend this to people who have had a tragedy. I want to recommend it to everybody in regards to the possibility of tragedy, because I do feel like it's arrogant for any of us to think, oh, that's not going to happen to me.
Yeah. That we're somehow in control and safe from all the random, terrible things that happen to people all over the world. Right. We're not. Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely true. I think I say somewhere in the book that we teach our children about love, but not about death, not about grief. And it creates a fear. And I think part of what made my grief experience initially so difficult was people were scared of me. They were scared to talk to me. They were scared to upset me. They didn't know. They didn't want to say Ruby and Hart's names because they were scared that it might trigger me. I might get extra upset, as if I had forgotten about them, right? As if I had forgotten that I was grieving. Yeah. And I think it would benefit everybody if they did read my book. No, if they did, I agree. Feel more comfortable with grief and loss, because it would help them. It would also help the people they love who are experiencing loss, because they would be more comfortable staying in community with them and grieving together. And people wouldn't, I go to grief groups, and so often people complain so bitterly about how their community abandoned them, that they felt abandoned in their grief because people were scared of them. and didn't know what to say to them. They didn't know what words to say. And so they didn't say anything. And that leaves grieving people feeling so alone. And they're already alone, right? Because they just lost someone they love. Yeah.
I do want to ask you about atheism and your perspective there. I mean, I could see this happening, and it could either, one, make you more concrete in your atheism and even more prone to reject a God that would, if there is a God that allowed this, I don't accept that. And so even more so, nope, not a, or the other way. And especially with your exposure to, you say the Jewish traditions and construct where there is belief in a God, that it could also bring you over to that point. Did it alter one way or the other?
Yeah. It altered, I think, in one important way, which is I realized, because I was so rocked by the loss of Ruby and Hart, that it felt to me very clearly, I suddenly felt like Ruby and Hart are part of me and I'm part of them. And the line between us is not as clear as I thought. And the whole idea that we are these separate people, and the people we love are separate from us, suddenly felt not true. And it felt like we're connected. We're connected. And you could say that's spiritual or it's cosmic, but like the idea that there's a piece of us in all the people we love and a piece of them in all of us felt very real to me. And so I think that's a spiritual sense. And you could say that's God, right? You could say that's people's conception of God. Like God is love. God is what connects us. So there's that. So I guess I got a little spiritual in that sense. Yeah.
Well, let me ask a question on that. I'll pull on that string a little bit because it's a curiosity. I have studied, I don't even know if you want to call it the science somewhat, of some of those cellular connections, where they put a guy, hook him up to the electrodes, and then take some, I don't know, skin, DNA, whatever from him, put it in a petri dish and put it in the room next door. And when they do something to the dude, the same graph, things happen with the cells over it. Then they move it a block away and the same thing. And I look at that and go, there's some irrefutable science in there to the connection. And you read stuff about twins and some of the things that happen there. And of course I've got all my kids and then us, and I look around and sometimes it's hard not to think that there's some literal connectedness. Now we could say that's science and that's just how mankind is. Now, whether there's a God that created that or it's just happenstance, that we don't know. I can take it either way. I do believe in a God and a creator. And I think, well, he made the science, just like he did with the trees and whatever. But without that, even outside of that God, the connectedness I'm enthralled with. So hearing you say that is, I intrigue myself with that.
Yeah. It's really made me think about identity and like, who are we really? Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I'll take that. This is a line that you write out of the book. You said, and this is talking about loss specifically, which is kind of where I land, not where I landed, where my attraction is loss, whether it is your two teenage kids, whether it is a marriage, whether it is, for me, the family homestead and the whole thing, or just the ideal or a dream or a hope or whatever. So loss. I see so many people, it feels like, who are devastated by a loss of some sort, whether it's, well, I'll just stop there. A loss of some sort. We don't have to judge it. So you said, and I appreciate it, you said a profound loss is when you lose someone, and I put in parentheses or something, who you feel is entwined intrinsically with your identity. In other words, you define yourself partly in terms of this other person. So Colin, again, that was a big hook for me as I was looking at this. I'm tempted to say fracture of family. Now I've got 9 kids and I feel as close as ever I'm really closer to my kids. So it's not, the family overall just went their separate ways. We're still there, but the parental figures, there's a fracture there. And to some degree, what's also, I haven't figured out completely, is a lot of the grieving is to that family unit that was already it was already, fractured is a negative word, but it wasn't the same. I've got kids who they don't live at home. I don't have little kids now. They're all grown. They're all my size for the most part, And so even if everything had been perfect, that picture is gone. And I've realized my grieving for that, how hard it is to look at these old pictures of these kids they're all still alive. I could see you looking and going, dude, what the hell? So they're not the little people. Either way, a loss, and we've got this with people who've lost a career or they've lost health. They've lost a limb. I have friends in that. So,
yeah.
But your statement of when it's entwined intrinsically with identity, that's my interest because that's caused I've found myself looking at my attachments. It's not the thing so much as it's my attachment to that.
Right.
And you speak to that. So tell me more.
Yeah. Well, thank you for noticing that. Because I really wanted to open up this idea, because there's a lot of grief hierarchy. Sometimes people think like, oh, you lose this person, you deserve more grief than if you lose that person, right? You get that sort of grief hierarchy out there, or loss of a pet as opposed to loss of a child. And some people are outraged when someone is mourning the loss of a pet. It's like, it's just a pet. Well, it's just a pet to you, but not to them, right?
Colin, I saw a movie recently, a popular movie. I don't know, and they did that same thing. The guy's lamenting the grief of a mother or a spouse, and another guy says, "Oh my gosh, I totally feel you. I lost my dog," and it was an acute version. That was the preface they were trying to showcase that hierarchy.
Yeah, and so I wanted to open it up and make it so that the mourner defines it, right? You define it. You don't. No one else tells you how important your grief is. You say what it is, right? So if losing your cat or losing your marriage or losing your job, some people might be like, I lose a job, who cares? No big deal. Some other people, their job is their identity. That's who they are. That's how they define themselves. I am this person in this job. And when they lose that job, it's catastrophic. It's everything that they think about themselves, right? So I was proud of my definition that I opened it up in that way. Hopefully, that makes people feel included and seen in whatever they're grieving. Because if they're grieving it, then it mattered to them.
Well, so let me ask about attachment, because I'm questioning that. So much attachment I had around being the dad, the fixer, the Superman to this big family, which again, outside of anything that's happened, they're older. They don't need me. And I've had to try to back off to actually let them be responsible adults, so, but that was my identity. That was for me, fixing things that they didn't even want fixed or care about. But that was me. I'm the builder and the owner of the big home that we don't have now. I'm the superstar husband. Well, I'm not. I'm divorced. And on, and looking at the identity and realizing, okay, am I going to leave that and then come over here and just grasp onto a new identity, attach myself to now I don't know, king single guy, and I just dive back into athletics, super athlete. And what am I going to do to fill that void? Or can I question how or if I attach my identity to these things, and I'm looking at not necessarily, but I'm going to ask you, how has your view on your identity and how it is supported by those attachments?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And I think when people do experience a profound loss of any kind that rocks their identity, there's going to be a struggle for meaning and purpose. It's going to be hard to find, like, why are you still around, right? If you were this, uber husband, dad with this giant family and this big house, and that's not there anymore, then why bother doing anything, right? That's it. It's over, right? Your identity's gone. And certainly that was true for me. Why am I still alive? And it was a hard struggle. I think two things helped me. One was I was, again, terrified of that state. I was terrified of not feeling attached to life and feeling meaningless. The life was meaningless and that I did not like being there. So I was like, okay, how am I going to get out of this? And I thought I should act as if, not should, but it would help me if I acted as if I will find meaning and purpose. So doing the things, I say like fake it till you make it kind of vibe, which doesn't mean to fake it like be pretending, but take actions as if. So I had the sense early on, both my wife and I were like, maybe we'll foster adopt. Maybe that we'll be parents again. But we live in Los Angeles. They might speak Spanish, and we don't really speak much Spanish. We had a little bit of Spanish, but not that much. Let's take Spanish lessons. And it was a sort of eye opener for me because we were doing something, even though we didn't want to do anything, and it hurt to do something new with that. Like Ruby and Hart didn't know about our Spanish lessons because it happened after they were dead, right? So it's a new part of our life, but we did it anyway, and even didn't love it, but we were staying engaged in life. We were doing this thing because maybe we might foster adopt, maybe they might speak Spanish, right? You know what I mean? Like all these maybes. So it was really like a leap of faith that we would eventually be in a place where we would want to be able to parent, and they might speak Spanish, and this would be helpful to us. So we did things like that, you know. So even though I wasn't that attached to teaching anymore, I'm a professor. I'm an adjunct professor of theater and film. I was like, I'm going to go back to teaching because I think it meant something to me before. So maybe in the future it might mean something. So I'm going to try it anyway, you know, and see what happens. And sure enough, it helped me. And I got back into it. So that sort of leap of faith of investing in life, even though you don't think even though it seems meaningless. Just having faith that you're gonna get reconnected again. It might be a different identity, you know, and that's the other thing is continuity with the other side. So the one is like reach out to try new things, reach out for meaning and purpose, and find new meaning and purpose. And one of the ones I did was I wrote a book about grief and grieving. And so now I do talks to people about grief and grieving. And I try and be of assistance to other grievers. That's a huge part of my identity now, and it wasn't before at all. I didn't talk about grief at all. I didn't know anything about grief, and now suddenly I find myself talking frequently on panels or to gatherings of people, or Zooms of people who are grieving. So that's a new identity, but then also the idea of continuity. So there's a temptation to cut yourself off completely from the past identity. So, I was Ruby and Hart's dad, which meant I was friends with all of Ruby and Hart's friends, with their parents. That was my world. And there was a temptation to just drop all of that, right? Because who am I now to these kids and their parents? Our connection was Ruby and Hart, and they're gone. So I guess that's all gone. I have to find a totally new identity. And I think actually it was helpful to have some continuity to my past. So we kept connected to Ruby and Hart's friends. We kept connected to the parents, even though it was hard, because we kind of, I guess, trusted again that it would be important because they also love Ruby and Hart. So there's two. There's a continuity to the past that's been shattered, but also reaching out, looking for new stuff, new connections.
Okay, let me ask you more about identity and purpose, because you mentioned that in the book. It was maybe even before identity, it was your purpose. You're dad.
I was dad. I was Ruby and Hart's dad. Yeah.
Prior to that, you weren't. Prior to them,
right.
You were some single dude at some point. And you were, I assume to the best that you knew, you were okay. You were whole, quote, you were
right.
You were, and whatever purpose you felt at that time. Then you got married, and now you're a husband. You're a couple, and that's part of the identity now. And then you have kids and become a father and have this role that becomes part of your identity. Both of which can end, because on the date, June in 2019, I think it was, in a moment, you were no longer at least externally
Actively.
a father.
Yeah.
How did you question your reattachment there in being, so now you fostered kids, you adopted, now you are a father of two other kids.
Mm-hmm.
And was that okay, you said anything's game. I'm just fishing around here. But, think about the person who got divorced or lost something and they, go back and do it's the rebound marriage or something like that, to put it negative. You could do that here. But did you question your identity, purpose, and attachment as you looked at the possibility of other kids? Again, is it going to be different? Well, it has to be. But how did you look at that? How did you guard against it or towards it?
Yeah. No, there's definitely a sense of like, are we just trying to replace Ruby and Hart with two other random kids, But it didn't, we definitely had that thought, like that worry, like, is that what we're trying to do right now? But it didn't feel like that. It still doesn't feel like that to me. I don't want them to be like Ruby and Hart. We have a totally different relationship. So on one level, it's like, of course they're not. But yeah, we thought about that. Like, what are we trying to do here exactly? And I remember we went to see a therapist. I still see a therapist, and so does my wife. But we went together to see Ruby's old therapist. So Ruby had OCD and depression. She had an OCD therapist, and he met with us a couple of times. So he was like our couples therapist after the crash. And he said to me, before you had Ruby and Hart, you had other things you were interested in, right? You had other things that were part of your identity. Even when they were alive, you were doing other things. And I was like, yeah, but they don't matter anymore. Like, that's the reality. They don't, in that moment, they didn't matter at all. So yeah, I was a screenwriter. I was a professor. I did creative theater. I had friends. I'm a husband. I didn't care about any of that. That's just how it was. Early grief. It didn't matter. But so intellectually, yeah, of course, like, it doesn't make any sense. My whole life wasn't just Ruby and Hart. I was other things. But when they're gone, that trumped everything. And suddenly I just didn't care about anything. So there's that aspect of it. Just how catastrophic grief works. But it just obliterates everything. But then gradually you connect back and it's like, oh yeah, I do want to create theater. I do want to teach. I do want to make films, but I want to be a husband to my wife. So they come back. But in terms of like, worry about, are we just trying to somehow like replace Ruby and Hart and somehow skip out on the grief, right? Like I have two new kids, so I don't have to worry about my grief of Ruby and Hart. It actually is not true at all. It's like, in a way, it's harder to maybe this is obvious. It's harder to foster adopt teenagers while grieving than just grieving. And it doesn't erase the pain at all. It doesn't like fix it in the least. In a way, it almost heightens the loss because you're so hyper aware that Ruby and Hart aren't here because I'm parenting other people. But also they're so different from Ruby and Hart that it doesn't feel like a continuum or like, it's like we're doing a very different thing with Andrew and Gladys, my two children now. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, well, I had somebody ask me, Colin, I don't know, it was a long time ago, or I don't know, years ago. And they said, if we took away all of the roles, athlete, husband, father, hero, fixer, podcaster, author, whatever, took away all those things. And even the achievements, somebody who had done this and this and this and took those away, then who are you? And I remember at the time going, I'm absolutely nothing. What the hell? How do you answer the question? Just nothing. I'm a formless blob. I didn't understand that. And I don't know that I have a perfect answer for it today, but it's something I continue to ponder and question, because I do look at all those things. Those can all be taken away. I can have an accident and not be the athlete that I was, or have a health issue. I'm not a husband anymore with the epic marriage. I am a father, but even outside of that, I'm, less and less am I don't know what you call it, quote, active, meaning I don't have dependents. I mean, I'm always there, always on call, whatever, but I'm not needed as much. And at some point I won't be needed daily much at all. It's just going to be me. Yeah. And who am I? And I'm cautious now in looking at the things that I'm doing and how I attach myself to those things. Yeah. Is there any, as you look at those things, do you, I had Bob Rosen on the show, Dr. Bob Rosen, psychiatrist. He wrote the book recently, Detached, and it was about attachments. And I said, so is the goal just to not be attached to anything? And he said, no, but question the severity of it. If without that thing, you can't function, that's where we're in danger. Do you feel more healthy in that regards now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I've come to the idea that I love attachments.
Okay.
That like, almost like, in a way, it's like not messier the better, but it feels more like I'm living life, that I have messy attachments to people, because it's complicated with these foster teenagers. Who am I to them? They just met me 3 years ago, so we have a different relationship, and I don't know what's going to happen in our future. I don't know how it's going to go. And we fostered another teenager who ended up essentially rejecting us. After 18 months, she decided she didn't want to be adopted. She didn't want to be adopted by anybody. She wanted to just age out and be on her own. And even though we knew, and the social workers all knew that was a terrible plan, she was old enough to make her decision. And she's like, I know my rights. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm out. And you can't stop it. And it's like, okay, wow, this is a terrible idea. But I don't regret. I don't regret the 18 months I spent with her, even though that's so painful and unresolved. She's still out there somewhere, and not in a great place. And I can't help her. I know I text every now and again, but now she's disappeared again. So you know what I mean? So I've attached myself to this chaotic teenager out there somewhere, right? And it would have been safer if I hadn't.
Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't be worrying about this other person if I never met her. But why be entangled? And it's like, well, life is short. Let's get entangled. That's what I think. Let's make it. Let's go. It's so much more interesting.
Is it fair to align that with you having faith in your, I'll use the word resilience, that you're going to go ahead and get messy? And maybe even more so now, because you know that you can survive whatever. You can, if there's another loss, you're going to be okay. Right. Is that fair?
Yeah, I know. I won't be okay, but I know that I'll be okay with not being okay. Okay, I guess fair. Is what you're saying. I'll be wrecked.
That you'll survive in essence. Yes. And okay.
Yeah. I think so. I think we had to have that trust in order to go again and foster adopt again. So after the teenager left us, we're like, oh my God, we lost 3 kids now, and we're like, let's do it again, because it just seems like it makes life more interesting.
Fair. Well, I do want to do a little justice to the concept of finding the words, of having someone who goes through a tragedy, has a loss, and how do you be for them? So again, it wasn't that a year and a half or so ago and lost my dad. So he got the diagnosis, and 6 weeks. I'm sorry. We walked with him 6 weeks, and then the last breath. And during that time, so many people, he was a pretty well-known guy, and so many people came forward, and we got to kind of watch that.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't an impetus on me. I mean, I was with him, so I didn't have to have some wise words. We were with it. The words were coming to us from other people. We don't know what to say, and the things that were said, and looking at that. And here, I'll lead off with this question: empathy is such a big word these days. Brene Brown's made that word infamous. At this word, empathy, and yet I would say, well, with what happened with you, I don't know what that's like. I have not experienced that type of a loss, even with my dad. I mean, he was older, and it was a surprise. But to lose a child, I can try to think what that might be like. But for me to come, well, the first thing that I wouldn't say, and I assume you would support me in this, is, "Oh, I understand. I totally understand." Right. I imagine you would want to say, "Yeah, kiss my butt." You don't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that people get very nervous because, there's that thought of like saying the wrong thing. It seems so disastrous. And it is disastrous if you really if you're trying to minimize their pain. That's where people go off the rail, I feel like. So if anything you're trying to say to me is trying to comfort me or make me feel better or cheer me up, that's going to backfire.
Plan, Colin. God has a plan.
Exactly. Yeah. Meant to be. God has a plan, or, you can always adopt kids, I guess, would be something you could say. No one said that to me, but or if I was younger, you could always have another kid, right? That happens to people. Yeah. Or at least you got 17 years with Ruby. Like anything that's trying to minimize it, at least, or look on the bright side, or cheer up, those are going to not go well with anybody who's grieving. It's never going to work. But instead, if you're just acknowledging that it's a terrible loss, and you feel so bad for me, and also if you have anything nice you could say about my kids, if you met them, telling me a story about them, or asking me how I feel, connecting with me, you can't go wrong. That's how I felt. So I did this thing I call it my grief spiel. So early on, to try and reassure people so that they would talk to me, I invented this grief spiel, I called it, which is basically I pull people aside and tell them what the deal is. This is what I need. So I found the words to express my own grief needs to my friends. And very early on, it was like, talk to me about Ruby and Hart. Say their names. And also, don't worry. You can't say anything wrong to me that's going to hurt me, because I'm already hurt all the way. Like I'm upset as far as I can be. You're not going to make me more upset. And it wasn't technically true, because people could say something every now and again. But I wanted the conversations more than anything else. The worst was people not talking to me. I think that's probably true for every griever. The worst thing is to be left alone forever, right?
Well, and let me pull out, because I appreciate you pulling out the concept of there are no words. Somebody saying that there are no words, and then there's nothing, and you said that's not helpful.
Yeah, that was like a conversation killer, right? Because you're literally saying, we can't talk about this. It's so awful, we can't talk about it. And I needed to talk about it. I wanted to talk about it. Like, wait, I'm trying to process this. This is this crazy loss. I have no way of processing this. I need to talk about it. And I want to talk about Ruby and Hart. I don't want you to stop talking about them. So what do you mean there are no words? Like, come up with something. Give me something, And yeah. So I had, when I understand the instinct behind it, right? I understand the impulse, which is like, you're trying to tell me that my loss is so catastrophic that there's no adequate words, right? I can't adequately address your grief, but I don't need the adequate. I just need you to talk to me. I don't want to be the door closed on me, closed on conversation, and that's what that ultimately was doing. So I go off on that phrase a little bit.
Do you even, so looking back not looking back, you're still there now, but did you need, I'm trying to figure out how to say, do you need empathy? Do you need me to give you something? Is there something that I can give words wise, empathy, that matters that much, or is it more helpful to ask you to give words?
Yeah. I think the best words I ever got were when people were telling me about Ruby and Hart.
Okay.
When someone would come to me and tell me a Ruby and Hart story, or how much they meant to them, or how sad they are that they're gone. Those were the best things.
And in
That's
my
the
case,
best
I
thing.
don't have that. I did not know
Right.
them. So it's the next best
Right.
thing for me to say, hey, tell me something you loved about
Yeah.
Ruby and Hart that you thought of in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think that people asking me about my kids is great. Yeah. Yeah. I can tell you a
Asking
Ruby and Hart
about
story.
who they were more so than obviously there's got to be, I could sit here as the quote interviewer and just asking you the details of the wreck, which I don't
All right.
assume gives you any benefit.
No. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's another thing. Thank you for saying that, because sometimes people gravitate towards like how somebody died. And that's not interesting to me. I don't want to dwell on their deaths. I want to be asked about how they lived. I think it's particularly hard for people when their loved one died of like a accidental overdose or death by suicide. Suddenly people get very like, who found them, or did you expect it, or all these questions that are like awful to the griever. They don't want to be asked those questions. It just feels like you're being nosy and like gossipy almost, right? So definitely asking questions about how they lived. Yeah, not about the death.
How would you, Colin, say that? What are the highlights of what are primary changes? I assume positive, but I guess it could go either. But changes in you, the guy you were 6 years ago. What's different about that guy today?
Yeah. Yeah. I struggled a lot initially with this idea of like post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have anything good happen. I was just like, no, Ruby and Hart were killed. It's awful. There's nothing good. There's nothing good about this. I refuse to acknowledge that there's any positive thing. But now gradually I had to acknowledge that I've become more empathetic. I've become much more understanding and much more compassionate about other people's grief. And I'm much more comfortable talking about grief. So before Ruby and Hart were killed, I would not, if you had lost your 2 kids, I wouldn't be talking to you. I'd be scared. I'd be scared. And I'd be like, I don't know what to say to him. Right. And now I feel very comfortable talking to people in grief, even in fresh grief. I'm not scared. I'm not scared of it. And I was so terrified before. And I feel like I have a deeper understanding of life and how important it is to love, because that's what they taught me. The fact that they were taken away from me was like, I knew I loved them. I knew that they were my world when they were here. I was not like an absentee dad who didn't appreciate being a dad. I absolutely loved it. And it was so meaningful to me. I didn't miss out on that part of it, but I didn't understand the full extent of how important it was, just like how it just dwarfed everything. And now I appreciate love more than I did. Yeah.
Okay, then let me ask you, on that note, let me ask you this, and I don't perceive you at all as somebody who's sitting there in regret, but I see you as, I'm going to say, sober with your emotions and perspectives. So in that, do you look back and go, gosh, I do regret, I wish I had done X, Y, Z. I wish I had connected with them in this way or done something. Is there any list there?
Yeah, for sure. And I try not to dwell too much in that because it's a hard place to be, right? Regrets.
Yeah.
But I definitely regret. So Ruby struggled with OCD and depression. And when it was first starting, I was scared of that. I was scared of mental illness in general as like a topic, I just was just like, this is scary. This is out of my control. I can't fix her. And I wanted to fix her. And I think I was not ready to accept that mental illness could happen to my family. It was always like somebody else's problem, right? Suddenly, no, it's my daughter, and she's struggling with depression and suicidality and OCD. That no, I can't handle that, and I regret how I responded initially. I wisened up and became a good dad to her. And my wife and I both got her, finally got her a great therapist and got her great medications, and I think learned how to help her and accept her. But I wished I had done it earlier. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to use your word from a little bit ago. You're not going to shy away from getting messy today. Would you have just been more willing to get messier with her earlier?
Yeah. I think it was hard for me to let go. She was like this incredibly brilliant young kid. So she was like, test off the charts, and was like always like so smart, and read voraciously, read faster than I did, literally twice as fast as I did. And she was so clever. And the idea that then so I had all these visions of, brilliant Ruby is going to go off and become who knows what, and then her academics went off the rails when she started having OCD, because it blocked her ability to hand in assignments, and she was depressed. And it took me a while to let go of that dream I had for her, which is sort of kind of like what relates to what you're saying about your dream of being a dad with this giant family in this house. And like, you have to let go of that. And I couldn't let go of it right away. And I remember thinking like, you were at the top school, and now you can't even function at like the worst school, basically. Sort of that kind of like vibe, like what's happening? And instead I should have just been like, it's all going to be fine. Just, you're just getting through life and it's fine. And she was actually turning into a brilliant artist. And by the time she was killed, it was suddenly clear that she didn't need to go to this top Ivy League school to be this brilliant, scientist. She was going to be a brilliant artist, a beautiful artist creating amazing artwork. And that was going to be her path. And academics were kind of irrelevant, you know what I mean? Yeah. In that path. Like, she's still brilliant, but she didn't need to, do great in standardized tests or whatever it was, because she had a new path that was inspiring to her and was beautiful to her. And so it was like a wake up of like, right, I was trying to control her life because I saw it a certain way. And mental illness didn't fit in my vision for her life. That's not how life works. We're not in control.
My question of what you see different about yourself as you've been talking, would you say you are more, I don't mean this from a spiritual religious context, but in general, more faithful, braver, more courageous? Any of those resonate?
Yeah, I think definitely braver. I guess you could say faithful in the sense of like, I try not to be so controlling. I try to understand that we're not in control. No. And that could be a faith thing, I guess. Yeah, right? Does that resonate? The idea that I don't think that God's in control. I think that no one's in control. That's just how it goes. But I think I'm braver. Yeah, I'm definitely less scared of grief, mental illness, difficult conversations. I think are less scary to me.
Well, gosh, so in my vernacular, I would almost say you have more faith in your bravery. Thus, you're willing to get messy again. Let's do it again. That to me is, I don't know, a better word than faith. So for lack of a better word,
I'll take it.
One more question. You mentioned it earlier, and I know you do a one-man show and whatnot, but you said something, or maybe it was in the book, about, I don't know if you used the word comedy. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Tell me how that here's my context. It's a biased thing because I was with a friend a couple of weeks ago and talking about some relatively serious and hard things in his life, actually, dealing with wife and kids. And found ourselves, I had not laughed so much in a long time. I'm not much of I don't do comedy stuff. I don't watch comedies much. I mean, once in a while. I don't do silly stuff. It's just, I thought I could probably laugh more. I mean, I think I smile much. I'm not like super stern or something like that, but it's just, I tend to be more serious. And here I was just aware of, oh my gosh, I'm laughing. And I kind of connected the dots that I think I find more, it wasn't humor. I don't know. Maybe you can help me out, but that release, I felt it more in regards to serious topics. So that's my context of curiosity. And here you are, and having known you've mentioned along with this some aspects of comedy. I don't know if you say if it helped or what the place is. So help me out.
Yeah. Well, I think for me it was strange. My wife and I were making jokes pretty early on, like within the first day or two. They were dark, very dark jokes. And it was surprising, but it also, I guess it felt like a release, like we needed to go dark and make dark jokes. And I think on one hand, it was like, are we avoiding our grief through humor? It doesn't feel like it. And then the other hand is that Ruby and Hart were funny. And we as a foursome were funny. We appreciated humor, the four of us. We had a lot of in-jokes. We had a lot of, our son Hart was like a clown character who was just constantly making jokes and playing these ridiculous characters, making people laugh. And my wife is a comedy writer. Like literally her profession is writing jokes. And so it felt like, well, no, we're being honest as our family. Like we're being true to us, right? This is honoring Ruby and Hart because we're a funny family. They would be making jokes. So even though it felt like, wow, this is inappropriate. And it's like, no, it's honoring them and it's necessary for us. We needed to make these jokes. And so when I wrote this one-man show I initially thought of it as a stand-up routine. I thought the experience of losing Ruby and Hart and being out in the world and the strange things that happen, the things people say to me, the real nature of grieving. This is funny. And I've never heard anyone make these dark jokes before. And I'm going to make the darkest jokes you could imagine. That was how I thought about it. I don't know why. I just thought like, I'm going to really make dark jokes. And then it evolved and it was no longer stand-up. So my solo show is not stand-up at all. It's a piece of theater and it has a lot of humor in it. But it's not a bunch of jokes. But it was central. It was central to the grieving process. I think there's like a maybe a way of handling the taboo nature. Maybe it's like, grief is so upsetting. You and your conversation with your friend, joking about it makes it like cuts it down to size maybe, and allows us to process it in a different way. So it's not like this monolith of awfulness, but we're humans. We can joke about this and still feel it. We're not pushing it away. That can happen too. Some people are like real jokesters and they don't deal with real emotions. They just joke about it, right? That's annoying. But if you're really dealing with the emotions and finding humor in it, I think that's helpful.
I found your depictions and stories, I don't know if this is perfectly accurate, but somewhat respectfully irreverent. That I did feel that you were honoring and respectful people, but you also were quick to call BS on some of the concepts of how we deal with or don't deal with tragedy and grief. And again, that's why you're here. I read, as I continued to read, I just felt like what a great handbook for dealing with grief, and tragedy. But I am more almost prone to have people look at this and think about the possibility, again, like death, to say, how are you preparing for possible tragedy? And be able to, withstand it, come out on the other side, learn, grow, all the things that we can put on that, but not be destroyed by it, not be destroyed. Because I see that you talked about post-traumatic growth. And man, I feel like we're at a place now where we have more normalized not growing from these traumas, and it's not helping us. So man, I'm grateful for the spirit in which you did this, for the journey that you've had, and that you made the effort to put it in a book and sit here with me because it is a benefit to me. And I will be talking about it at the table with my kids tonight. So Colin, thank you. Thanks for what you're doing. And thanks for the insight and what I feel is wisdom.
No, I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well,
it's nice having a conversation with you. It was a nice talk.
Thank you, Colin.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me in this conversation, joining us, myself, and that's Colin Campbell. Again, his book that I got a hold of, I'm so grateful for, is Finding the Words, Working Through Profound Loss with Hope and with Purpose. Got any questions or comments on this? Just shoot me an email, kmiller@kevinmiller.co. Till next time, here's to the evolving you.
Yeah.